What's up, dudes? We got this done. All completed, put together. Let's get you into the video and show you how I do the final finish and final rundown. So the big thing is to test the different colors. So I wanted to see if the finish on the back of the neck was stained or just sealed in a brown. And what I did is I tested a couple different colors and then put a coat of brown over that. That was not it. So what we did is came up with a couple different colors with Angelus. We tried russet, brown, a little bit of black, and what I found was a combination of russet and brown worked best. So we went with that. It sort of matched the one spot on the headstock that wasn't sanded, and so we apply that. Found a couple of scratches in the finish, so we went ahead and cleaned those up with some 320. And then we will go back over it and clean it up and get that final stain in. We had a little bit of a gap on two spots, so we used some filler here. Fill it in, sand it back off. This is a putty-based wood filler. It's white, and we'll go ahead and add a little bit more stain to it. So this is after I forgot to record. So I put that same stain on and recorded this a little late. Sorry, guys. So we let that putty dry, we sanded it, and then added this final coat. And then the good old steel wool trick, 24 hours later. Go ahead and just take a little bit of that top color off, and now I've got the exposed flame. This is where I probably could have left a little bit more color on, but we went with it. Matched close enough. So we then put some sanding sealer on here. This locks in the color so it doesn't get picked up out of the wood, which is what happens if you just go with lacquer. And then we just start putting some clear coats on. We did 4 coats of sanding sealer, and then what we're going to do is add a base coat of nitro. Vintage nitro from Stu Mac. And we have a lot of different ways to spray this. A little bit of this is watching paint dry, which it's always hard to do these final finish videos because I'm just spraying and I can't get the camera angle right because I've got spray paint floating around the shop here. The first coat was vintage nitro, and the second coat was the amber to color the sides of the white binded fretboard. And then here we start taping off the body and airbrushing the neck heel, kind of like a vintage jazz guitar. This is what Gibson did to hide their ugly neck that wasn't matched perfectly. So we do probably about 4 coats. The way I did this is I took the Stu Mac Tobacco Brown and I poured it into a cup and then used that as the airbrush. The color was exactly perfect, and I didn't want to make my own color because I just didn't think it looked correct. This is exactly the color for this, and you put on a bunch of really heavy coats and it all blends in and it looks perfect. So then I had to retape the heel that you see here, and I had to carry that brown all the way down to the horn. So I put 1 coat on, then put a second coat on, the third coat I got that heel covered up. And then here we start putting the final clear coats on to get this perfect. So this is the seal coat. Seal in all of that tobacco brown. What a nice vintage finish on this. So make sure you put on a couple of thin coats and don't let it sag. And then what I do is I come back, let it dry, and then sand it smooth so that way it's nice and level. So same thing, a little vintage amber on the sides just to color it up. And then we go ahead and come back with an actual gun, spray gun, and just plain nitro. There, I've got my mask on, and I'm putting on some real thicker coats with this stuff now. Then we're going to use super acylic sanding paper, dry sanding paper. This stuff is outstanding. 600, 800, 1000, 1500. I didn't go over it perfectly. Again, in the later video, I'll use something called a dirty buff, where I'm not looking to get every swirl mark out. You want sort of different swirl grades of sandpaper because a vintage guitar has different looks and feels. So we'll go ahead and use this paper up to 1500, but I'm not going to get it perfect because I don't want it perfect. It's not a perfect guitar, and getting it perfectly high gloss would look weird because then the body's aged and the neck is perfect. So we go as quick as we can, making sure that we've got it level, and then we do the whole body as well with this. So we're going to buff the whole guitar, but also sand out the guitar as well. You got to let the lacquer dry for about 3 weeks before you take it to the buffer, or you just burn it off. So make sure if you guys are spraying nitro, that's one thing you keep in your head. This sandpaper is really amazing. I love using this stuff. Alright, so back to the home shop built buffer, homemade buffer. It's a buffer I built years ago. It's one of my first YouTube videos of me buffing a Les Paul. We use some fine Mirza buffing compound, and we go ahead and just start buffing the sucker out. Everyone was concerned when I posted that on Insta that slippage was too much, and the video sped up, and so I had it, it just moves around the buffer. This is, I think, 4 times speed, so it looks worse than it did. But we'll just buff. Make sure I've got a vacuum cleaner running below the buffer, picking up some of the dust, and I got a dust mask, earmuffs, all that good stuff. So pretty, look at that. And then as soon as you start assembling it, you start scratching it up a little bit, which takes off a little bit of that sheen. Looking good. Alright, we're going to cut the nut. So this is a tusk nut, and we're going to lower the strings in the saddle, or in the nut. This is 46, 36, 28, 19, 13, and 10 fret size. You got to use the StewMac fret files, nut files. They're the best. So then we're going to use the StewMac understring fret level system. I do this because I want the frets perfectly level. The neck is perfectly straight. I want to level the frets so that they are dead even. And this tool allows you to do that. So 320 grit, you can get under the strings and fret level under tension, which is ideal. Come back with the StewMac diamond coated fret files, and all the fretting tools are StewMac. No one else sells anything close. So if this feels like a StewMac ad, it slightly is. I have yet to find something that's comparable for some of their really good tools. Then here's a trick to put tape down. You just bend it over so you don't have to keep cutting it. I've been doing this for years. A lot of guys don't like doing that, but this is my trick. So I don't have to keep cutting. You just bend it over right in the middle and it's perfect. So then we go from 320 up to 2000 in terms of leveling the frets after they've been crowned. This takes out all the scratches. I go 320, 400, 600, 800, 1000, 1500, 2000, and then I buff. And that's the process to get the perfect fret polish. So then here is the StewMac buffing wheels for fretting. And we'll go through and just buff up these frets to be nice and perfect, nice and smooth. We're then going to take off the tape, put some fret juice on here, fretboard juice, scrape up the frets with a razor blade, or the fretboard with a razor blade, just to clean up any gunk left over. And there's a little fret juice. I will go live in video here to give you the final run through. Alright, so this comes to conclusion, the hardest repair I've ever undertaken. I cannot believe the amount of damage that this neck and guitar sustained, and I cannot believe actually how it turned out. I'll point out some of the flaws still. Again, this is less than a player's grade guitar now because of the amount of extensive work that went into it. I'm really impressed with how well this turned out. The coloring of the neck is maybe a tad light. What I'm hoping is that over time, as this darkens up, it'll be a little bit less yellow. I was hoping when I added the coloring and did the steel wool trick that it would be maybe a little less yellow, if that's possible. But what's really nice is from a distance, you cannot tell that this has been repaired. It's really close. When you get really close to it, you can see some of the different pieces of wood that I used to splice this together. The ebony strips came out really nice. There's a spot here and a spot here, and maybe a spot right there that I had to use a little bit of lacquer to fill where there was gaps. I did not want to continue chipping into the neck. I felt like I had it strong and stable and it wasn't going to move, and that's what happened. I actually got this under string tension for about a week, let it sit, and the neck was dead straight even. So I've got a dual-way truss rod in here now so that if it does move over time, I can adjust it. I did do a dirty buff, and what that means is I did not sand perfectly with each grit. Obviously, the body is aged, and the neck now kind of looks perfect. But what I didn't want to do was have this completely perfect and then I'd have to refinish the body, which then kind of kills the full value of it. It's original, other than the neck. I saved all the most important parts, which is the beautiful headstock, the serial number, the made in the USA, and a trained eye will definitely see all the issues with this. I did find the right bridge that fits these posts, which is great. These are tarback Gibson humbuckers. I don't know the age. The owner found them, sent them to me. The guitar sounds outstanding. It's got a ton of sustain, maple neck, ebony board. Thing rings forever. We ended up putting on new knobs, new switch, new bridge, used original tuners, original truss rod cover, but the neck has been completely rebuilt. A couple of the issues that I'm not 100% happy with, and this is where I share my flaws. The headstock inlay at the first fret is off by, maybe a 32nd. It needs to be moved over just slightly. And as you go down the neck, you don't really see that. Not sure if my CNC is exactly straight on that run, but that's one issue I see. It could have been moved over just slightly. The neck on the back here bubbled a little bit. The lacquer bubbled. I buffed it out once more. I still got to do just a little bit more sanding before I ship. So that may need to be cleaned up in the future. I do know that this guitar may need to come back in the shop to do an adjustment on the frets. When I was leveling the frets, for some reason, the high E buzzed out up here and it buzzed out down here. So I went over the high spots with my fret level. I think it's good. I'm pretty happy with it. I cannot believe the amount of damage that this guitar sustained, and I got it back to a playable function. The coloring of the guitar was very difficult to get. We had aged lacquer on the body, and then I had to use the StewMac tinted amber, really light sprays like you see in the video, but the coloring isn't perfect. What I'm hoping is, as this ages over time, it'll begin to look more like this. And even as I was sanding some of this out, you can see where I pulled off that layer of age, and you can see it's sort of white again. So as this ages, we'll see where it goes. I mean, the guitar is pretty beat up. The body sustained a little bit of damage when it fell, a couple divots here and there. The fretboard is slightly thicker than a 2550 fretboard like the one I have. You can tell that it's just slightly pronounced, but the neck has got a really nice feel. It's slightly thicker, but that's kind of the way I had to put this together. I'm thinking that this single coil tap switch that I moved back to its original spot will age up, and it probably will crack around this, but I'm really happy with the coloring. I don't know if you guys can tell. There are some swirl marks here and there, but that's how this guitar would look after being played for a while. We'll give you a sound clip here. I am playing through my Mesa Boogie Heartbreaker amp. That's a JCM and a Super 100. This is mic'd up, and we'll just play a couple riffs here. So the most difficult neck repair I've ever undertaken. The amount of damage that was on the front and the back was unbelievable. I didn't think as I got through it, it would get there, but here we are. So we're going to do a recompile of all this into one 15-minute video. Hopefully that does real well, and we'll take on more complicated projects like this in the future. So thanks for watching. See you in the next video.